Hey, what's up guys? It's Mike from Job Ready English, and I want to lay out a 6-month plan to getting hired. Now, 6 months might sound like quite a long time, but I tend to say to people, if you're looking for a job, say for example you're looking for a graduate scheme or you're looking to change careers, then you want to allow about 3 to 6 months and lay out a plan. And this all came from a really lovely comment that I read on one of our videos, and the end of the comment was, it's currently March and graduate scheme applications aren't out to at least 6 months. How would you go about getting myself ready? I'm currently doing psychometric tests and getting some interview questions in too. How would you go about structuring the week? I want to lay out for you a 9-step plan. And this is a plan that I have used literally thousands of times since 2013. And it doesn't matter whether you are a graduate, an intern, an apprentice, a mid-level professional, or you're looking to change roles for, say for example, director, VP, SVP, or a partner. The way that I tend to think about this is the person who prepares best will win, and that's why I set the expectation of 6 months. Because generally what tends to happen is people are like, oh my God, I need to get a job and I need to get one right now. So therefore that urgency creates carelessness and chaos. And from that, you get a lot of frustration because there's no planning involved. So I'm going to take you through each of these steps. Some steps may apply to you, some may not. You can skip them as you see fit. But I'm pretty sure if you follow the steps that I've laid out, if you download Application Success Secrets, which is down in the description below, which is a free pack of downloads to help you get your first, next or last interview, then you should have no problem at all in making progress through the process. Step number 1, reverse engineer the process. Now, what I mean by this is, and this is something that a lot of people leave out, is first of all, you have to set your target or your goal. What is it that you want to do? If you simply turn around and say, well, I just want to get a job, I just want to get any job, then you're going to find it so frustrating, and it's going to be such a time suck for you where you're just sitting there mindlessly trawling through LinkedIn, through Indeed, through different job adverts, and just applying for lots of different things. Plus, this is very quickly going to start to crush your self-esteem. So say, for example, you wanted to be an auditor or a chartered accountant. So you'd say, right, so I want to be a chartered accountant. Okay, cool. So how do I become a chartered accountant? Well, I'm already, doing a degree. I've got my bachelor's degree. What grade do I need to get? Cool. Then you're going to find out, well, which are the companies that I want to go and work for, which comes in step 2. So then you start to list out these companies. What skills are they looking for? Are there any hard skills that are required that I can start to learn now? What qualifications am I going to receive? And you can start to reverse engineer the process. And reverse engineering that process also means learning about the application process for each of these different companies, the steps that you're going to have to go through, and then putting yourself in the best position possible. Say for example you're applying for the graduate scheme for PwC, KPMG, Deloitte and EY, then you'd want to know, when does the graduate scheme open? When is it that I need to apply for? And then you start to track back that process. Say you track back 6 months, you're super organized right now and you're kind of getting ready and thinking about September graduate schemes. Because from that you can start to apportion your time, organize your schedule, figure out what you can say yes to, what you can say no to. These are all really important considerations to make, because those 6 months seems like a long time, and though as I lay out each of these steps you may think individually some of them are slightly time consuming, you will save a huge amount of time if you plan effectively rather than just rushing around like a headless chicken trying to throw darts in the dark. Step number 2, make an application plan. Now, whenever somebody books a consultation with me and they want to talk about their strategy, it's generally because they've gone through a long period of time of failure. So for example, just last week I had a mum and dad call me about their son, and their son had gone through a long period of failing and not quite getting the result that he was looking for, and he was now deeply frustrated. His parents had watched some of our content through YouTube, and then they reached out to me directly to do some one-to-one sessions with him. Now, the first thing that I asked them, and the first question that I ask most people is, that's cool, so how many companies have you applied to? What stage have you gotten to? What stage have you got on the furthest in? Do you have a list of those companies? And I would say 95% of the time, people have got absolutely no idea what they've already done. They've got no plan, they've got no record, they've got nothing to show, and they've got nothing that they can track. All they've kind of done is, whenever they have a spare moment of time, they go, right, gotta get a job, I'm gonna sit down, I am going to apply for loads of jobs through Indeed, apply for loads of jobs through LinkedIn, and you just get that kind of phantom feeling of achievement through busyness. And to be frankly honest with you, it probably leaves you feeling a little bit hollow and frustrated inside. If you sat there on Indeed because you had a random 45 minutes and one click applied to 100 different companies and none of them get back to you, it just leaves you with that kind of bad taste in your mouth, and you think, I'm not going to do that again, it doesn't work. But it's all through the randomness. Now, an application plan, and I'll keep referring to different things that you can download down in Application Success Secrets below, is really just a spreadsheet. So it is a spreadsheet of 50 companies, 50 roles, 50 links directly to the company, and then keeping a track of where you are in that application stage. This is incredibly useful when it comes to following up your applications, figuring out if your CV is working, your cover letter, whether you've got to prepare for online tests, whether you have to recontact employers who you maybe applied to 7 days, 14, 21 days ago, and just drop them a little email and say, hey Mike, just wanted to drop you an email just to see if this vacancy is still open. And you can also close out the applications that didn't work, keep an eye on your deadlines, and most importantly, you have a plan to refer to whenever you have the time to make job applications. So all of these steps is really about removing the randomness in what you're doing, and also removing your sense of frustration, because you've got that 45 minutes, what do? You refer to your application plan, you sit down, you think, right, those 3 companies are actually opening this week, I'm going to prioritize those applications. Takes me 20 minutes an application, so I've got 45 minutes now, I can do 2, and also I'm going to do 1 on a Sunday. Having an application plan really helps to organize all of the different things that are going on, and stops you trying to rely on your brain or constantly trawling through your emails to see where your applications are and what you're doing. Step number 3, organisation and consistency. Now, all of us lead busy lives. There are many different things which are pulling on our attention and what it is that we should be doing. Most of those things come from screens, but if you tend to be reasonably well disciplined or have some kind of schedule, then the next thing you need to think about is, when are you making time to look for a job on a regular basis? I would say at least an hour to 3 hours a week. Now, it could be more, probably shouldn't be less, but you're going to need to schedule that time somewhere, and I suggest you do it in such a way where it is repeatable. What this does kind of imply is that you have some kind of organisation system in place. I suggest doing something that's just as simple as possible, even if that's just a paper to-do list and a calendar. It could be a physical or digital calendar. I prefer digital calendars, for example, reminders that I will get on my phone about stuff that's coming up. And you should diarise the time when you're doing stuff. So you would diarise an hour for doing applications, for practicing online tests, for doing your interviews, and just have that time set aside. What this has the benefit of doing, and why I prefer digital over physical, is that when somebody comes along and presents me with an opportunity and says, do you want to go out, do you want to do this, can you do this meeting, I just look at my calendar really quickly and I just say, I'm really sorry, I can't, because I've already got something booked into the diary. It also kind of gets me out of something that I used to find quite difficult to do, which is just saying no to people. A lot of being able to do what you want to do is based upon being able to say no to what other people want you to do, and this means defending your time. So if you have more time, then that's brilliant, but if you find yourself really sort of time poor and feeling like you've never got enough time, then organisation is generally kind of where it's at. Otherwise, what you're going to find is you're just going to become bitter and resentful as you're trying to jam everything in. The other thing to kind of point out is consistency is a superpower. So that's why I'm talking about 6 months, 3 months, which isn't sexy. It doesn't make for really good YouTube clickbait, but it's the truth. You know, my experience of working with one-to-one clients over an extensive period of time is that they take about 3 to 6 months. These are really clever, driven and ambitious people with busy schedules. So to me, it's a realistic representation of trying to do something which is quite hard, instead of saying how you can find a job today, how you could find a job this week. I mean, you could find any job, but is that going to be the job that you actually want to do? So the consistency is really, for me personally, and what I tend to suggest to clients is just do the same thing at the same time every week if you can. So is it a Wednesday afternoon when you have set aside for job stuff? Is it a Saturday morning? Is it a Sunday evening? And just having that consistency in your schedule is really going to stack over time. It's quite difficult to do in the first sort of 2 to 4 weeks, but once you start to stack on top of it, and you want to pick a amount of time in each session which is easy for you, which is doable. If you say you're going to do this for the next 4 hours and it fills you with dread, don't do that. You know, cut it down to 15 minutes, 10 minutes. The general kind of advice that I like to give comes from James Clear's book, which is Atomic Habits, which is just the smallest amount of time that to you is laughably easy. It's just like, well, could you spend 5 minutes a day doing this? Oh, of course I could. That's I mean, I could easily do that. Great, then start there. Because again, with consistency, it will stack. And generally what I tend to find is people start slow and then it just kind of goes like that. And you have that kind of hockey stick curve. But people don't have the patience to stick with the consistency of the sort of 2, 4, 6 weeks that it takes to build that habit. Step number 4, CVs and cover letters. Now, this is kind of the first place to start for the thing that you have to be sending out to different places. And a CV is a good place to start. You can find our template down in the description below. I'm not going to talk about CVs or cover letters in great depth. What I would say is, yes, they do matter, and also they're probably not going to be viewed by humans. One of the most important things that I put emphasis on, particularly at Job Ready English, is this idea of application tracking systems, algorithms, having the right keywords in your CVs and cover letters. Now, of course, there is variance because I try to deal with lots of different situations and scenarios over a broad range and size of companies, but most big companies don't. There's not a person sitting there looking at your CV. It goes through some sort of ATS like Talio, where essentially they're just looking for particular keywords, and you can find those in the job description. So you can use a simple piece of software like JobScan or something that's similar to that, where you can just basically pay for a subscription, put in your CV and your cover letter and your job description, click a button, and it will say how closely you match to the job description. You know, you don't want to go too mad about this. It doesn't have to be 100% match. Generally anything above 50%. Now, every single time I suggest this to people, they get more interviews. It's really just as simple as that. And generally where people aren't getting success is that they're just kind of bored and frustrated through their random efforts, and they're just sending out, you know, the same CV, the same cover letter, because they believe that quantity will beat quality, which it doesn't, because you know there's no point turning up to the party if it's not the time that you are meant to turn up to the party. You can turn up as many times as you like, and eventually maybe you turn up at the right time. Really, you just want to find out the time and the date of the party. Now that might seem like a really stupid example, but it's just like just sending random CVs. I mean, doesn't match the job description, doesn't have any of the keywords, the skills, the experiences that they want. They're just not going to look at it, and that's the reason why lots of companies use application tracking systems, because it helps screen out loads of just garbage applications of people just randomly clicking a button. With cover letters, they matter. Now, a lot of people struggle with writing cover letters. It's not just you. I would say once you start to use our one-page cheat sheet, and we do have a course which is built around cover letters and lots of different examples, but once you sort of start to refine this, you can probably get a cover letter written in about 20 minutes. 20 minutes to 30 minutes, depending on, you know, how good you are. But you would always defer to 2 or 3 high quality applications a week than 20 to 30 just garbage generic applications. You're much more likely to get a higher success rate if you're doing it that way. It may feel like more work, but that's only because you're kind of really having to think about what you need to say rather than just sitting there and just clicking a button, apply now, apply now, apply now. Step number 5, automating vacancies and applications. Now, something that a lot of people don't think about is that the best vacancies to apply for are the most recent ones, generally the ones that have happened within the last 7 days, because you've got an employer somewhere who's desperate to find somebody because they've got a job that needs to be done, and if they can find you, then that would be amazing. This could be slightly different for graduate schemes, but again, you always want to be early. So when you're kind of planning out your timeline, you want to think, as soon as that graduate scheme opens, I will apply on day 1. Like, I won't apply near the deadline, because all the time, you know, the closer that you're getting to the deadline, the less and less jobs that there are, and the more and more people that are applying. So it's just becoming ratio-wise much more difficult for you to get the job. And hands down, you know, I will always get a flurry of people sending inquiries or looking for help in December, January, because I just left it too late. And again, all of these steps are interlinked, because if you had an application plan, you organise your time and you were consistent, and you kind of had that to refer to, then you won't find yourself in that place. So trying to automate the vacancy process is just using, you know, specific, you know, very specific searches, whether that be on Indeed or using Google, like Google Jobs, that can just, something that can just email you very specific searches on a daily or weekly basis. Just helps you to not keep going back through that process over and over again. As much as possible, you want to take the thought out of what you're doing. You just want to be presented with stuff to do, and then as you find vacancies which you like, which you're suitable for, you can just add them into your application planner. Because all the time you're going to kind of have this golden list of companies that you really want to work for, plus new vacancies that will just be slotting into the bottom of that. Step number 6, online tests or technical upskilling. Now, online tests are not such a big deal if you're a professional and you're watching this video, but you may have some element of technical upskilling, which I'll talk about shortly. With online tests, the most common reason why people fail is that they're just too lazy or too arrogant. So they fail the online test because they think, I'm really clever, I went to a great university, or I've got this degree, or blah, blah, blah. And they take an online test, and the most common reason why they fail is because they just run out of time. So they've never been put in a situation where they have to answer 20 questions in 20 minutes or 20 questions in 10 minutes for, say, for example, logical tests. The best way around this is just go and buy a pack of online tests and practice those tests. I implore you to not sit on the internet for hours and hours trying to find free tests. There are lots of great online test providers out there that you can use, which are really quite reasonable, maybe £30, £50, £70. At the end of the day, it's your future. If you want to get everything for free, then you're going to get a really low quality of information, because it's going to be really hard for you to practice those tests at volume, and again, to reduce the friction of the process, so that when you've got to practice for online tests, you're not sitting on Google trying to search for stuff for 20 minutes, and more than likely you find yourself on Reddit or YouTube or playing some stupid game, and then 3 hours pass and you've really done nothing. Now, for professionals that are watching this, try to think about skills generally that are in the desirable qualities for the jobs that you're applying for. Now, particularly for sort of professional and experience level jobs, they will tend to have a list of desirable skills. They might say, well, be great if you could code in Python, or be really good if you knew C++. And you might think, well, I don't really know those things. But if you started to learn now, then in 3 to 6 months, you could probably be reasonably okay at it. And then once you get the job, you could sit there and, you know, do a weekend boot camp or something for an Udemy course. But starting to know those skills that will not just make you as good as the other candidates, but will make you better. And a lot of that stuff tends to revolve around technology, whether that be data visualization, data analytics, a particular type of CRM, a SaaS, whatever that is. For most knowledge worker roles, knowing some type of software will give you an advantage over your competition. You can put that in your CV and your cover letter, which is picked up by your ATS, which means that you're more likely to get an interview. Now, bearing in mind, learning those skills does not take a huge amount of time to get a good general knowledge. We're not talking about being world class, we're not talking about being a professional, we're just talking about getting some type of working knowledge. And you could probably do that with a good Udemy course for £10–15 in 5 to 10 hours. And then you can start to take that time to apply that skill to real world problems, as and when you have the time, as is defined by your organisation or the schedule that you set out for yourself during the week. Step number 7, interview practice. Now, importantly, whenever people are thinking about practicing for interviews, they'll tend to wait until they get an interview, which is a real rookie mistake. Particularly if you're not very gregarious, you're not particularly confident, and you kind of know that you struggle with interviews. The people who leave their preparation to the last minute are generally the ones who are the most scared of interviews, or just the most arrogant, to be frankly honest with you. Now, what you don't want to find yourself in the position of doing is getting an interview for a job that you really, really want to do, and you just think, oh my God, I'm so unprepared. Now, something that you can get through, you know, some of our courses is just, for example, the ability to begin to lay out your most likely interview questions, choose your star stories, begin to practice your answers at random, write out your scripts, and start to get ready. I would say, you know, a good starting point is getting your personal introduction done and just getting used to this weird format of speaking in front of a video or speaking to other people. The more you practice, the more realistic your practice is, i.e. under time conditions, in a similar format to what you can expect in the real thing, the easier you're going to find the interview whenever you get it. I also tend to think that this has a definitive psychological advantage as well, where you're already thinking about getting interviews. So you almost get that kind of mental uplift of starting to think about, well, what's going to happen in my final interview? And I tend to observe that this has a positive effect on the people that I work with. Step number 8, which I kind of call, you know, the final third or the last couple of yards. Now, this could be an assessment centre, it could be a final interview, it could be a technical assessment, it could be a case study interview. There are lots of different things that could happen. Now, interestingly enough, my advice does deviate from the other things that we've covered, because actually the burden of work is all about getting and then passing that first interview. You'll tend to find that there will be a decent amount of lag time, not always. For example, for, I would say, you know, mid to senior level professionals, if they're desperate to hire, you might find you're getting turned around in interviews really quickly, but then you're just doing interviews, right? But for a lot of other things, for example, for assessment centres, you could be waiting 2 months. So I tend to recommend that you only start preparing for this when you get it. And the reason being is we kind of want to think, how is our time being allocated? And we're in a sort of general week, so we're sending out applications, getting vacancies, practicing for online tests or technical upskilling. We're doing our interviews. There's not a lot of time for other stuff. And I find for most people this is a bit of a reach too far in terms of saying, right, I'm going to get ready for my assessment centres, I'm going to do case study practice, or look, if you can fit it in, that's brilliant, but the chances are you're only going to sit a limited amount of sort of final assessments, final interviews, assessments, and it's probably a good idea in terms of time efficiency to wait until you actually have them and you've got the date booked in, then you can start to almost sort of put everything else to the side and intensively prepare for that thing. Just a little side note before I go on to step 9 is that you kind of want to prepare for things in terms of what is the most urgent and offers you the shortest path towards the result which you want. What I mean by that is, if you have a final interview coming up and 2 first round interviews, you want to concentrate on the final interview. If you have 3 interviews coming up, you want to concentrate on those interviews in terms of what you want the most or in terms of their chronological preference, but do one thing at a time. If you're trying to do like 7 different interviews at the same time, I tend to find that that doesn't work. Now, step number 9 is what I call the awkward avoidance step. Now, hands down, of the thousands of one-to-ones that I've done, I always really just want to get to the root of what is the thing that you need to do but you are avoiding. Is that speaking out loud? Is it socialization? Is it your fear of rejection? Is it presentations? There's always one thing that you know watching this video that you're just avoiding because it scares the crap out of you, right? That's the thing that you want to lean into. If you're nervous about socialization, go to meetups. If you hate presentations, practice, random topic presentations, and so on and so forth. I urge you that if you face your biggest fear, your biggest area of discomfort, you will see massive dividends in terms of everything else that you need to do. So, thank you so much for the person who left that comment. I hope that answers your question. If you'd like more videos like this, please do let me know. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I wish you the best of luck. See you later.